Hello, and welcome to Public Policy Analysis. My name is Dr. Carl Snook, and I will be your instructor this semester. I hope that you're all looking forward to having an exciting semester where we will learn a skill and we will also get an opportunity to explore areas of public policy that are very interesting to us. You'll see as you start to work your way through the first module that there's a list of topics that I am hoping to limit ourselves to this semester. I worked very hard to make sure that it's a range of topics that could interest just about any random group of people interested in government. However, at the same time, I can't know everything about everything. So I tried to make sure that I gained a little bit of information on all of these topics, or they're things that I've studied in the past. Now, this semester, our course is fully online. However, I am going to strongly encourage you to communicate with me at least once this semester via Teams, where we can talk about the topic that you're choosing and how you've decided to narrow it down to address a specific policy problem or concern within that policy area that you're exploring. You have 22 different topics, but if you look at it, you're going to see that some of them are a bit too broad to deal with in a 12 to 15 page paper. If you think about it, the number of pages necessary to hire somebody to mow the lawn at a public park in Atlanta is probably longer than 12 to 15 double-spaced pages. In fact, I've dealt with directions on how to put things together at Christmas time that seemed to be about as long as your paper's going to be. So, if you're thinking about some topic that could fill libraries, then it's probably not something that you can really address. However, we'll work together to narrow it down while at the same time having it be something that really can capture your imagination. So, because it's an online course, office hours, I don't think of office hours as necessarily being time that I'm in my office, but I do try every semester to have some contact with every single student. And therefore, I think that the Teams meetings will be very useful. And what we'll do is I'll have a sign up during probably the second week of the course where we'll set something up for you all to speak with me for 15-20 minutes. Now, I'm not going to require that this semester. In the past, I've had mandatory meetings. This semester, it's just a very, very strongly encouraged meeting, because without it, you might be going in the wrong direction without even knowing it, and that's something that I really don't want. I taught a class in a public policy analysis class last semester where everybody passed, and that really made me feel good. That was kind of, a little bit rare, right? Somebody gives up, or somebody has something happen and it just makes it impossible for them to pass, and it's a really heartbreaking situation. But I find that when we stay on the same page with each other, that we tend to be able to work to get everybody through. And that's my goal, right? My goal is to teach you as much as is possible, but also to make sure that everyone succeeds. Everybody gets through the class with the grade they need. So this semester we only have one textbook. I've tried really hard to keep the price down. I haven't always done that in the past, and there are a lot of really great and fairly expensive public policy analysis textbooks, but one that's pretty inexpensive is A Practical Guide to Policy Analysis by Bardock and Patashnik, and it's available on Day One Access, so I strongly encourage you not to opt out. But if you do opt out, to purchase the textbook. If you look on Simple Syllabus, there's a picture of it so that you know you've picked the right one. And this eightfold guide that Bardock talks about is very useful for becoming a policy analyst. We will also have some PowerPoint presentations. A lot of the PowerPoint presentations are based on an older textbook by Michael Munger. Michael Munger is probably one of the foremost public policy / political scientist people of, let's say, the late 20th, early 21st century. And he comes at it from a slightly libertarian bent, which I think is an interesting and different perspective, but certainly one that's useful. I think that Bardock comes at it from a slightly more policy analyst, pure government type theorist that makes you feel like it's a safe base. But I'm also utilizing primarily articles and videos that will give you a different perspective, one that might be a less mathematical, a little less utilitarian, and might show you that there's many different perspectives from which policy analysis comes from. And so it's not that there won't be a fair amount of reading, it's just I'm trying to create a scenario where most of that reading isn't paid for by you, but is instead available to you by virtue of you being a student at our university. We have several assignments this course, but one way to look at it is that the assignments are kind of divided between assignments designed to show that you've learned the material. That is 2 midterms, one midterm and a final exam. And these will be a mixture of multiple choice. I'm thinking something like 25 multiple choice questions and about 10 short answer questions, with each part being worth 25 points. And the midterm will be about halfway through the semester, and the final will be at the very end. They will together comprise 100 points, so really only 20% of your grade. This, of course, is enough to seriously harm your grade if you don't learn the material, but at the same time, it gives you the opportunity to succeed in other ways. We have as many points as that are the final paper itself. It's a 100-point final paper with 2 intermediate assignments, a policy question assignment and a criteria and alternatives assignment that comprise another 40 points each. So you'll be doing a fair bit of writing, but again, it's all the writing that you do on those 2 smaller assignments will be very informative of what's in your final paper. And in fact, the criteria and alternatives paper, in many ways, you'll be able to airdrop elements of it directly into the final paper, and that'll save you a little bit of work. And then we're going to have some reaction papers. Reaction papers are a specific kind of paper that is about half summary and half where you take it to the implications that you are sensing from the material. You react. You speak to where the reading or where the video has taken you in your thoughts on policy analysis, and that will be about another 120 points. And then finally, we'll have a course engagement grade, and where you'll have to check in every semester. You'll have to do the assignments, and a personal introduction. Now, I had a student one time that said, I had a lot of trouble with the personal introduction, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. You know more about yourself than I do. but there's a prompt, and it's basically going to be in the discussion section so that everybody is going to have an opportunity to learn a little bit about each other and help create a learning community where we'll all feel comfortable with each other. But there'll be directions, specific directions on each of these assignments as they come up, and it's designed to try to be very straightforward for you. In fact, the entirety of Module 2 that will be will cover the paper. Now, somebody might ask, well, why are we spending that much time? And I'm saying, if you had an assignment that is that important, is that critical, as this is policy analysis and this is the policy analysis paper, you should take from that what you're learning in those modules is important enough, right? If somebody gives an assignment 1 week, that means that's 1 week worth of what you should know. In a 14-week class, if somebody gives it 2 weeks, then you know that this is a lot of the learning. This is very important to the final course. So the course calendar is in the syllabus. Remember, nowadays we don't have the syllabus in the regular part of the content of the course. There's a button on the course page called syllabus, and you click on it, and it will give you the syllabus for this course. You will see also that we're spending time. You're going to be looking at the syllabus. You should look at information about me. Oh, I'm supposed to put that in the syllabus now, but also I have a personal introduction in the Getting Started section where you learn a little bit about my family and what interests me. It might give you a bit of an insight in how to structure your personal introduction. And you can look at the course goals. We are going to have our time where we're looking at the policy paper directions, the rubric. I'm going to have an overview, a video overview that you're going to look at. You should look at the notes on source quality, giving you an idea of what I think is important, what I trust, what the information that I think is valuable, and give you a little bit of a warning on what I don't think is trustworthy. One thing you should always make sure of is that if you feel that there's some slant to any of the information that you get, you should definitely, first and foremost, look for some balancing information. If the first thing you find about a topic is somebody has a perfect solution, you should probably, when you look at Bardac's going to tell you the story of the $20 bill. You walk down the street and you see a $20 bill laying on the ground, and on the one hand you look at it and you say, wow, that's a $20 bill, I should pick it up. And then the other thing you go is, yeah, but if it was really a $20 bill, would people just be leaving it on the ground? If somebody tells you that they have the solution to a problem that has vexed society for, say, 100 years, you have to say, well, wait a second. Yeah, this guy's pretty friendly, and I might want to, I might want to debate politics with him, but do you think he really knows the answer? He's a sophomore at Kennesaw State, and these 600 government officials who've studied the problem for 20 years don't know how to do it. So yeah, of course the guy at Kennesaw State knows. On the other hand, some guy at somewhere just like Kennesaw State, if the problem's ever going to be solved, maybe he does know. So what you do is you go and you look for information and you look for data and you look for support, and maybe you are that guy, or maybe the guy you're talking to is. I have a list of course policies. I say be nice to each other, or it's what etiquette is, I think. It's going to talk a little bit about your obligations to utilize Chicago or American Political Science Association style. I have a thing about people who use MLA, because this isn't an English course. At Kennesaw State University, if you've ever checked, the social sciences building and the English building are actually separated by the Berlin Wall. And if you don't believe me, AI that. It is in fact true. So if you want to go across the Berlin Wall to get help from the English department, that's fine. But don't let them be imperial about it. Tell them that we use APSA in Chicago, and they love to teach that too. And it's what I'm used to, and the only reason anybody uses MLA is it's because what their English teacher in 8th grade knew. If she knew Chicago style, she'd know it was much better, and you never would have had to read all the way to the end of the entry to find out what year something was published. So my idea on late assignments is that late assignments lose 25% immediately, an additional 25% at the end of each day. But I don't think it should ever come to that, because I think that we can work out arrangements if you contact me before the deadline. And I'll try to send you messages if you don't get assignments in on time. So we'll work together on that. All right, so a couple other thoughts, things that come up. One thing that comes up from time to time, I would say on average once a semester. But when it does, it can be really damaging to a student, or potentially not damaging to a student, but definitely requires a lot of backtracking and working very hard to get straightened out, is students will submit papers or will submit files to me that are incorrect files. For instance, I will get your history assignment, or I will, and one would assume that your history professor will be getting your policy analysis assignment. Don't let that happen. I would recommend that every one of your papers gets saved as what it's called, my name, and your name. And so, if you have a paper called Animal Shelters in Georgia, you could call it something like Shelter Snook Smith. And you send that in, and I'll know who's turned it in, you'll know who you sent it to, and you'll know what the topic is. And it'll save everybody an awful lot of grief. I'm not saying I'm looking to fail you for turning in the wrong assignment, but I am saying that I've actually had students that I was never able to get back in touch with who had sent me corrupted files, and after a while you just have, they tell you put down a grade, and so it's a 500-point class with a 100-point final paper. Maybe that person's getting maybe that person has 360 out of 400 points. All of a sudden they have 360 out of 500 points, and they never like that. So let's not let that happen. Now, one of the things that's bad about having an introduction based entirely on what's in the syllabus is that you never get to talk about you never get to talk about the material, and that's the exciting part, right? The exciting part of introducing the material is that this is probably the greatest class, right? I will, all semester long, I'm going to treat this like this is the most important class you have, and I encourage you to do the same. This is a class where you're going to learn to communicate with the people who make decisions. There will be all sorts of people in political science or international affairs or whatever it is you study who will act like the way the world gets changed is through elections or through rich people giving tons of money. But ultimately, no matter how much money's in politics and no matter what the politician is saying, the person who is going to really help change, the person who's going to make the policy work is the policy analyst. You're going to narrow down the selections. You're going to figure out a path that goes from where we are to the dream that this politician has been selling to the public. We don't know for sure whether that politician really cares about the public. Maybe he has dedicated his life to it and it's only an accident that he's gone from being worth $500,000 to being worth $100 million. But ultimately what's going to happen is that somebody is going to have to come up with a plan that gets us from point A to point B. And point B is where one of the big policy problems of our world is solved. And you say, well, one of the options is, how do I get the lawn mowed in a park in Atlanta? And I say, well, if you let all the grass die in the park in Atlanta, then people who would otherwise have grown up to, play football on that park, or would have enjoyed, pretty days with, their mom as she made a picnic for them, or maybe people who, maybe people who just wanted to have a safe environment for doing the fun things that children do, like swing and play. Well, somebody has to take care of that park. And I think that that's legitimate. Of course, if you look at the other topics, they're, maybe you will find them to be more valuable, more important. And somebody has to come up with the plan that actually fixes the problem. And that's what we're going to train to do. And I also think that a lot of times we think we know what how the policy world works, and we don't. So I've included in our policy analysis course several really good articles on how public policy is made and how public policy is implemented. And we'll have opportunities to read that. In fact, your midterm exam is going to borrow heavily from needing to know some of that material. Well, anyway, lots of great stuff. You'll see that perhaps I enjoy this material a little bit more than the average person that you'll see at a gas station when you're filling up. But then again, I guess that's why money exists, right? I can't stand at the gas station and have people give me free gasoline in return for a lecture on cost benefit analysis. But then again, maybe I can tell you about it, and you'll pay for the course, and then the university will pay me. Anyway, have a great next couple days, and pretty soon you'll see an opportunity to sign up to speak with me, and I'll see you all